Welcome. This presentation will review Chapter 6 from the textbook entitled Inclusion Strategies for Secondary Classrooms by M.C. Gore. This chapter is titled Teaching Devices for Increasing Student Learning from Lectures and addresses strategies that teachers can utilize to better serve the needs of their exceptional learning needs students. Despite the many instruction options available to teachers, they still rely heavily on lecturing, especially in secondary schools. Back in the early 90s, teachers spent about 70% of their class time lecturing. Compared to present day, teachers have reduced their lecture time to 50%, which still accounts for a large amount of their day. A goal of secondary teachers is to prepare their students for college, where approximately 80% of their class time will be spent listening to lectures. Our textbook identifies that most teachers have at least one style of lecturing, while they say the better teachers tend to employ a variety of styles, depending on the context. At the ends of the lecture continuum are the read aloud style and the associating aloud style. The read aloud lecturers read verbatim from their notes or slides. And the associating aloud style is when a lecturer says whatever pops into their head, regardless of relevance to the topic at hand. The median of the two is considered a think aloud style, where the lecturer shares their thinking about a topic, which helps the students learn how to approach information the way an expert would on the subject. Our text mentions the researchers Brown and Bakhtar and how they asked college students who had a learning disability what their instructors could do to help them learn better from lectures, and they identified 5 strategies. The first, give them handouts or outlines, slow down the rate of delivery of the lecture, explicitly identify the most important parts of their lecture, regularly use overhead visuals, and finally, make the test reflect the lecture content. Let's look at some of the teaching devices our textbook suggests that will support students with ELN. With the research information in mind, Chapter 6 presents 10 different teaching devices for increasing ELN students' learning from lectures. The devices presented in the chapter are to simply slow down, pause procedure, solicit student examples, cue critical points, explicitly teach the big ideas, provide an advanced organizer, provide a plethora of examples, provide non-examples, teach CSA, CRA, and role-play difficult content. The images on the slide are some fun illustrations that were provided throughout the chapter as well. This chapter was particularly interesting to me as a future English teacher, as all of the suggestions in our text would be very useful in the English classroom. This presentation will highlight one device that I personally witnessed an English language development teacher use in the classroom. And that device is the first suggested strategy of Chapter 6, which is simply slowing down the delivery of a lecture. Our book shows how researchers have asked college students with learning disabilities what they most requested lecturers to do that could be the most effective in their learning. Their biggest complaint was that teachers are lecturing too quickly. A lecture is considered fast if 120 or more words per minute are said. ELN students cannot make sense or write quickly enough to process such a fast lecture speed. It will be hard for them to keep up with their note-taking and processing of the information, which will be very frustrating for them. If a lecture is high information dense and is structurally complex, the ELN students will get overloaded. It's suggested to keep the information density low, with no more than 50% of new information per lecture. I recently had the opportunity to observe an ELD English class at Lexington Junior High School. ELD stands for English Language Development. The teacher explained to me that all of the students in his class were English language learners and that among them were approximately 7 different native language speakers in the room. I was shocked and asked him how he navigated through his day. He said, slowly. The students, for the most part, could speak English, but were not yet ready for the speed of a grade-level English class. The teacher, Mr. Ray, began a lesson that would cover grammar and give the students a chance to tell a little bit about themselves. He gave them all a sheet of paper that had a cloud in the middle that said, "I can't live without." He asked the students to draw straight lines stemming from the cloud all around the page. He took his sample sheet and placed it under the document camera so the students could see it better. He drew his own lines, and the students followed along and drew theirs as well. He asked them to put their pens down and watch while he filled in his selections. He used the time to read each answer carefully and slowly and indicated that these were his own examples and everyone's will be different and unique. He used this time to discuss capitalizations and punctuation, mostly making sure they put a period at the end of each statement to complete the phrase, "I can't live without." So for each phrase he said, "I can't live without Pizza Hut," and discussed how both the P and the H were capitalized because it was the name of the restaurant. He said, "I can't live without my mom's Italian cooking," "I can't live without my dog, Sugar," and "I can't live without ice cream." Note how he used a period at the end of each of those statements. Mr. Ray then asked them to fill out their own cloud sheet using either their native language or English. He instructed them to open Google Translate on their Chromebooks, and they began completing their worksheets. This was a fun exercise for the students because this was all about them. Any answer they wanted to give would work. It was easy to see that the students took pride in their work and got excited to share their answers with their classmates. Mr. Ray walked around the room and engaged with the students, answering questions and helping with corrections when needed. The lesson was easy to follow, and the teacher provided step-by-step instructions at a slow pace. This would be a great help to students that have trouble with procedural steps, and because their answers directly related to their personal interests, this lesson would be helpful and fun for students that have metacognition issues. After witnessing a slower-paced lecture in my fieldwork, I definitely agree that ELN students benefit from a slower lecture because their frustration is decreased when they can keep up with their notes. Motivation is enhanced when students see that they are keeping up with their notes. And their perception is increased when students have time to process auditory information. Mr. Ray's lesson was simple enough to follow for the ELL students because he took the time to pace the delivery of his instructions, which resulted in motivated students that were excited to share their assignments with one another, which made an added benefit that the students had fun. As a future English teacher, I really look forward to using several of these strategies that were included in this chapter. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.